People of Reddit, what is your downright scariest real-life story? Serious. I had a pulmonary embolism last year in late August. The first was going to get a pain evaluation the following Monday. But the pain was so bad on Friday that I just went in. The doctor told me that I'd have died if I had waited. I was home alone when I was 11. I had just fallen asleep and someone tried to break in the front door. I called 911 and hid in the pantry in the bottom shelf. They came to the door next to the pantry and tried to break into that door too. The police got there and one of them picked me up and held me until my mom got there. I wouldn't let go and he made sure I felt safe. I'm 27 and haven't stayed home alone much since. The day I signed a lease for my first apartment, I got a dog so I wouldn't be alone. It's pretty traumatizing when you're that young. When I first learned that some of the nicest people out there can be dealing with some terrible demons. When I was younger, about around 2nd, 3rd grade, I had a math tutor at the time. She was my mom's friend from AA. Didn't really understand it at the time. She was a really nice lady and the reason I'm so good with math even till this day. One of the days she was supposed to come over. My mother couldn't get a hold of her. So my mom got concerned and we took a ride over to check on her to see if she was okay. When we got to her place, we found her so drunk, laying on the floor and couldn't even stand. My mom had to call an ambulance. Later that day, my mom had to explain to me what happened and that she had passed away. Taught me that day no matter how good things look on the outside for some people, the demons on the inside could just be moments away from taking them. I've posted this before but it fits here as well. I always parked in a certain spot at my last job for 12 years that I was there. It was accessible to the public as it wasn't company parking, but they wanted us to park in the back of the lot so the closer spots could be available for customers. One day my spot's taken by a dark-tinted caddy and I'm immediately pissed because everyone knows it's mine. It's morning shift, so 4 a.m., so it can't be one of the others cause I know what they drive. So newbie? Or maybe another employee from another shop in the plaza? It's still there on my lunch break and when I go home and the next day I come in at 1 p.m. till close around 9:30. And then also the next. Something about it really bothered me. It smelled wrong. Literally. It's the South and high summer and who knows what's baking in there. My dad was a Marine then a police officer. He always said if you feel something is wrong there probably is. So I dialed the non-emergency contact police number. I felt like an idiot but every time I walked by it bugged me. So I was stuck waiting for over an hour before anyone shows and honestly, if I hadn't been off the next day would have been like F it. But I waited. Mostly because I can be really a petty sob and that's my spot, damn it. The police show. All annoyed because who knows how many, they can't park here, calls they get. They run the license plate though and then things go crazy. They want my info. Want me to contact my manager. Does this lot have cameras? Have I touched the car? Etc. Apparently the car is on Amber Alert as the last sighting of a missing person who was a minor. A 15-year-old girl. When they pop the trunk they find her dead. Mutilated body under a blanket and the source of the smell. She had gone out with her much older, controlling and insecure boyfriend but had decided to get out of the relationship. She only made the mistake of getting into the car with him. He drove 3 counties over after torturing her, stuffing her in there and who knows what else. Then parked and walked away. Left her to die in the trunk. I never learned her time of death so it haunts me sometimes thinking she might have been saved if I'd made a fuss earlier. So yeah, listen to your gut even if it seems petty. This is very tame compared to a lot of the stuff on here. But when I was 12 I saw this huge man drop a dollar bill. He seemed not to notice. so I ran across the street to hand it back to him. He thanked me several times. And I could see that he wasn't right in the head. I was a pretty small girl. Probably only 100 pounds at the time. This guy easily had a foot on me. All of a sudden, he grabbed me by the top of my head and wouldn't let go. I am so lucky that my dad was nearby, and he pretty much just picked me up and led me away. I used to sleepwalk when I was a child. We lived in a rough neighborhood, Decatur, Ga, and I would wake up outside in the middle of the night, not knowing how I got there, and would have to walk home and walk into the darkened doorway I had left wide open for whoever might be lurking around. However, the time that scared me the most was when I was about 9 years old. I woke up and found myself with the bedroom curtains drawn back and staring out the window. As I came awake, I noticed a very large and completely hairless man. No hair, eyebrows, etc., staring at me and slowly inching closer to the window and closer to my face. He was looking bewildered, like he wasn't sure what he was seeing. At that moment, I realized what was going on and I started screaming uncontrollably, frozen in place and peeing down my leg. The man freaked out and screamed, did a tumbling move, and then ran off in a weird zigzag like he was trying to dodge bullets. My mom woke up and thought I probably had a nightmare. The next morning we found a screwdriver on the front porch and damage to the door jamb and door handle. I still just about pee my pants when I tell that story. But now it is usually from laughing. I will never forget the look on his face when I started coming to life and screaming, or his high-pitched scream, or his duck and roll and dodging and bobbing all the way down the street. When I was 17, my mom's husband had this mental breakdown and attempted to kill her. I was recovering from knee surgery at the time, but still ran from my room to see what was going on. My baby brother, who was 4 at the time, was in the room when he was chalking and stomping on her, and I had took him out the room and told my other siblings to leave the house and get someone to call the cops. I had to tackle him to get him off her and had pinned him up against the washer and dryer and yelled at her to leave. I had tried to lock him in their room to leave the house and look for my siblings, and he just pushed me and went into the kitchen to grab a knife. He was trying to hurt himself because in the small time frame I had called the cops. While on the phone he looked me in the eyes and started to cut himself and then locked himself in the bathroom since he figured he would be arrested if he was gone. What scared me the most was how calm he was when he said, "She's cheating on me, so if I can't have her, no one else will," as I was screaming at him. I have no idea how I had got him off her because he was 6'3" and 300 somethings lbs. I'm 21 now, and to this day I get jumpy around knives and panic when I don't hear from my mom after she leaves the house. I was riding my motorcycle on the highway, going through a major city. I was still pretty nervous about riding on busier highways since I was still pretty new on the motorcycle. I was in one of the middle lanes when about 250 feet in front of me an 18-wheeler semi kicked up a plywood panel that was in the road in my lane. It flipped around, making it look like I was going to run into it like a wall. Didn't have enough time to brake or move lanes since I was surrounded by other vehicles. Luckily another 18-wheeler passed by it, causing it to rotate perpendicular, making it barely graze my elbow as I passed by it. I don't think I moved a muscle for a quarter mile in shock that I survived that. I was rushing to a lab class, had books in one hand, lunch in the other, and attempted to walk downstairs into the lab. Except the steps were old cement steps with metal lips, and the tip of my foot caught the lip. I went head first. Never touched anything the entire way down until I landed on my neck against the wall at the bottom of the stairs. I felt my entire weight load into my neck and every single vertebrate popped. I knew I was dead. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't move. Everyone rushed out of the lab to see what happened. Apparently it was loud. I was 300 pounds at the time. And then all got the sudden the breath rushed back into my lungs and I could breath and move. I got up. It felt miraculous. Ended up with occasional severe back pain that eventually went away after 18 months or so. Was with a guy for a couple of years when I realized that he'd taken up smoking meth as a hobby. After work, we had numerous problems already. And I had 3 small kids. So I finally kicked him out. A few days later, maybe a week, he makes a fake Facebook page and sends me a friend request. The only posts on the page were talking about killing me and my children, his suicide, and how he planned to do it that day. The most recent post was accompanied by a selfie of him in my backyard. A recent selfie, so he had been there. I was on my way home with the kids late in the evening when I got the request. I had stopped by my parents' home the day before and gotten my dad's 9mm handgun because he was sending messages through mutual friends about burning my house down. I called the police as soon as I got home. And they didn't seem to think it was a big deal and didn't have an officer available to come check my house before we walked into it. I live in the middle of the woods and we have a rinky-dink police force. Anyway, I made the kids stay in the car. I gave my oldest instructions on what to do if anything happened. And I had to sweep my own home. In the dark. With a 9mm in case he was in there waiting for me and my children. And it was terrifying. I had to check my entire house every time we came home for a while. And I was always worried that I'd eventually find him in there. Police were called numerous times and I was eventually granted a restraining order a couple weeks later when the death threats continued. He died about a year ago and all I felt was relief. I was leaving a grocery store in Vermont back in '99. I passed a young couple, maybe in their late 20s with a toddler and a baby. They were arguing loudly but I chose to mind my own business. The arguing stops as she starts to leave. I dismiss it and start to drive away. When I heard 4 or 5 gunshots, I watched kill himself with the last shot through my rearview mirror. The boss killed his wife and kids before killing himself. I still have nightmares about what I saw. Had a seizure so bad my BF at the time had to do compressions. Went to the afterwards and was there for hours. A few years ago, when I still lived at home with my mom in Philly, someone tried breaking into our house. I looked through the window next to the door and saw 2 men wearing ski masks staring back at me. One with some type of pipe or tool and the other with a gun pointed right at me. I bolted away from the door and got my dad's 10 gauge and stood in the bathroom door as I called 911. They ended up running and were caught down the road by the police. They had multiple warrants each for break-ins in Maryland and Delaware. One of which left a father of 2 shot in the spine and paralyzed. I'm still thankful to this day that I wasn't harmed during that. A year ago I was hospitalized with an infection in my right lower leg. They drew a line a few inches below my knee and said if the infection spreads past this line I'll lose my leg below the knee. They pumped me full of antibiotics and it seemed to work. I had to finish my antibiotics regimen at a nearby rehab hospital. The day before I was transferred, my roommate and I were eating breakfast. He was an older gentleman. And when he slept he made a weird gurgling noise. He said to a passing nutritionist that his breakfast should have come with 2 coffees. I heard that gurgling noise at the foot of his bed behind the curtain that separated us. This was still during COVID. I was about to call a nurse when one ran in asking if he was okay. The guy was coding. All of a sudden our room had nurses and a doctor running in to save this guy. It was controlled chaos. Procedures and medicines being used being called out. One nurse kept track of everything on a laptop. I couldn't go anywhere. I was in the bed closet to the window. They kept pushing me closer to the window so more people could help him. They worked on him for over an hour. They called the time of death shortly afterwards. The doctor asked for a moment of silence. He saw me sitting up in my bed and came over and asked if I was all right. I said I was, even though I had tears in my eyes. Other nurses kept asking if I needed anything. These people took time out to see if I was okay after what I just witnessed. I asked one of the nurses to open the window a bit. She smiled and understood what I meant. It was a sunny day and very peaceful outside the window. Even now, typing this out a year later, it brings tears to my eyes. I heard someone's final words on this earth. "Excuse me, miss, but my breakfast was supposed to come with 2 coffees." I was at my friend's house for the night to celebrate his birthday. We were 10. We wanted to camp outside the house on the lawn, so we set up tents and separated the girls and boys. We stayed up past midnight just playing board games and talking when the girls started trying to scare us by slapping the tent. We went out to check and all we could hear laughing from the girls' tent. So we did the exact same. This went on for about 20 minutes, then everyone decided to go to bed. We all were almost asleep when we heard the girls scream. They thought we were pushing on the tent again, but we weren't. Then the same thing happened to us. We just brushed it off as we thought the girls would be getting us back for something we didn't do. But then at the exact same time, both our tents started caving in. Like something was pushing from all directions. We all screamed and ran inside. From that point on, we were all terrified. Constantly hearing noises like knocking on walls and footsteps, etc. I don't remember how long it lasted, but we all eventually passed out and woke up the next morning trying to figure out an explanation for the tents and the noises. But we couldn't. Everything about the night wasn't adding up to any conclusion we came to. A couple side points. 1 # my friend lived on a farm in the middle of nowhere, so it's unlikely it was people messing with us. Point 2 # the farmhouse is also on a hill with no trees nearby, so it couldn't have been wild animals pushing on the roof. Point 3 # my friend's parents are religious and always go to bed at the same time every night. Sure, they could have messed with us, but it didn't seem right. Point 4 # my friend was also the oldest child in his family, so he didn't have any older siblings to mess with us. I still have questions about that day and it still puzzles me 12 years later. But it was definitely one of the scariest experiences of my life. Copied and pasted from the other post. So, I was 4 years old and my sister was 2. My whole family, which consists my parents, my grandmother, me and my sister, were inside family vehicle, waiting for the green light at the crossroad. I and my sister were just goofing around, sitting in front of the rear seat, which your feet are supposed to be placed. And suddenly, the shovel of the excavator just penetrated the rear window and stopped just few inch far from my parents' heads in front seat. I and my sister didn't get hurt because we were playing under the seat. My grandmother didn't get hurt because she was too short, so that the shovel just went over her head. And my parents didn't get hurt basically because of miracle. Yes, nobody got hurt, but it was traumatizing AF. I am still not able to drive mainly because of this incident. When I was younger, I had a bunk bed. I slept at the top and my brother slept at the bottom. One summer morning I was feeling extremely lazy, so I stayed in bed and had a lay-in. I was the only one in my room. For some reason I always slept with the door to my back, so I couldn't see who was coming in, unless I sat up and turned around. On that morning I felt someone touching me. I thought it was my little sister playing with me, so I told her to cut it out. No response. A few minutes later told her to leave my room. No response, and my door had stayed closed this whole time. So I suspect she was hiding under my bed. so I jumped down to kick her out. Oddly enough, no one was there. Till this day I don't know who touched me, but whatever it was felt real. It had weight to it. I did ask everyone if they had come into my room that evening, but they all said no. It's been 12 years and I still think about it. Went snowmobiling in the woods with friends of my parents and their mutual friends. Some psychopath decided to tie an iron wire across the trail from tree to tree. The sled in front of mine was going around 60 miles per hour when the wire decapitated both of them at the neck. The sled and their bodies continued on until it crashed off the trail. Their heads and their helmets remained in the snow. This happened in Maine. Dead ass. I'm old. 67. So I've had a few. Emergency landing while flying from London to DC. Smoke in the cockpit. Dropping from 30,000 feet to below 10,000 so the flight deck could open windows. Ended up in northern Quebec province after flying through steep craggy valleys until we landed at a NATO AFB. Sailing with friends who got sucked around the point while snorkeling and couldn't get back to the boat. As an inexperienced dingy driver, I had to go rescue them. I nearly picked up who I believe was Ted Bundy at a rest stop. He was wearing the creepy arm sling. He liked my VW Beetle. It's the same color as mine. Flushed. Primitive camping in the desert. I went outside early in the morning before sunrise to do my business. We were the only tent within what we later learned was a dry wash. There had been storms up in the mountains that day. I heard the rushing water. And in the breaking dawn, saw a wave of water and debris heading towards us upstream. Ran back to tent. Without doing my business. Woke up my boyfriend. And left everything behind. A minute later, the flood hit our tent and environs and we lost everything but our lives. Pro tip. Do not camp in dry washes. Welcome to my TED Talk. I was 6 and watched my 3-year-old sister get run over by my uncle's car. She was playing at the bottom of a hilled driveway. Uncle was working on a car up top and it slipped out of gear. I watched the car moving and called to my sister, but she didn't move. Which ended up likely saving her life as she didn't get hit by the wheels. She was small enough that she got drug underneath it a few feet. I was absolutely speechless and ran to find my aunt. She went in an ambulance to the hospital but was relatively okay. No lasting physical damage.
If you enjoyed this video, please check out our playlists full of similar content. Epicaricast is like doom scrolling for your ears. Please like, share, and subscribe.